Hello, everybody. Welcome to a Good Friday edition of TFE Live, our show for the 19th of April, 2019, show number 175, which I'm reminded is the same number of shows as New York Yacht Club is years old. This is their 175th anniversary for New York Yacht Club. Big summer going on in Newport, Rhode Island. We'll be there for the 12-meter Worlds action during the 175th anniversary regatta for the New York Yacht Club. Special show today. We're very pleased to have in studio. I'm going to go right there right now. We have our longtime friend, chairman of the board of St. Francis Yacht Club, Paul Cayard.
Good Friday.
Good Friday.
Yeah.
Julie, I trust you're well.
Well, indeed. Thank you.
Do you want to say your usual little bit?
Oh, yes. Please like us, share us, and look at Patreon.
Patreon and give us a buck. Paul, we have something now like, I don't know, 100 people who sign up via Patreon and give us $1 a month or $2. Some people give us 100 a month.
Wow.
And This is, again, learned from the gamers and how they do it. Welcome to all of you from around the world. Thank you for joining us for this special show with Paul live in studio, one of our sport's true rock stars. Not coincidental, I suppose, that it's Holy Week. But to all of you who celebrate it, happy Good Friday, if that's the right thing to say. Happy Easter, and hope you have a nice holy weekend, end of the week. And also, speaking of, well, this is really His Holiness. This is the Dean of Yachting in our sport, Dean of the Yachting Journalists, Bob Fisher from Great Britain, who will be our live guest next Tuesday, live via Skype. He actually, Paulie, he wanted to come on today. He said, I want to come on and ask Cayard some questions, but it would have been a little hard to do both the Skype and have a live in-studio guest. But we also want to wish Bob a very happy birthday. He turns 84 years young tomorrow.
Happy birthday, Bob.
So from
Happy
all of us
birthday.
here, Fish,
Yeah.
and I'm sure all of you watching, happy birthday to our dear friend, the Dean of the Yachting Journalists, Bob Fisher. Okay, Paul's in studio. As you know, Paul is not only one of our sport's true rock stars and also a volunteer who's taking time not only with the Star Sailors League, but as chairman of the board with St. Francis Yacht Club. He's sailed in the America's Cup. He's won the Volvo, what was then the Whitbread race, the Volvo Round the World race, now called the Ocean race. We'll talk to him about that, Sail GP, and a few other things. But we really want to focus on the Star Sailors League, which we talked about on Tuesday's show, and ran an article Tuesday morning. Really, I think this is one of the most exciting developments in the sport. And Paul's going to tell us all about that. He's just back from Lausanne in Switzerland, where he was named captain of Team USA. Before we get into all that with Paul, watch this video. I think you'll enjoy this, and it's a good introduction to what we'll be talking about with Paul in a sec.
We used to laugh and play. We used to laugh and play.
SSL Gold Cup is like a World Cup in football. Top athletes, led by the captains, will represent their countries in the competition to crown the best sailing nation. Sport of sailing had never event like this. It's not about the technology. It's not about another sailing adventure. It's not about the individual competition. It's about the teamwork and the teams which will gather together to fight in the SSL Gold Cup. 5 of them will be selected from the SSL Global Ranking, and 5 others will be selected by the captain. They will meet all together to sail on the one designed boat provided by the regatta organizer. It is expected that more than 50 nations will join for the competition in 2021 for the SSL Gold Cup.
The SSL Gold Cup is a great opportunity for me personally, but also for other young Greek sailors who want to make an impact on their international sailing stage.
The SSL Gold Cup, in my eyes, is a really fantastic format, and it's going to be an amazing event. I'm already looking really forward to it, because for me as an individual sailor, laser sailor, always being alone on my boat, it's a great opportunity to sail.
With the SSL Gold Cup, we now have an event that has been missing in sailing. It's not about the technology, it's not about the speed, it's about the skill and talent and teamwork of the sailors. It's about countries, it's about national pride. And in the end, the winner will be determined by just a matter of meters.
Okay, cool stuff, eh? Not technology, not determined by a high-speed competition. Paul, were you taking a whack at anyone or any regatta in particular?
No, I'm not. I'm not here to take whacks at anybody, but I am here to support great ideas. And I think having a competition where it's just all about the sailing, it's basically one design boats, and we're adding, 9 people aboard. So there's gonna be a lot of teamwork to it, and then the national aspect to it, I think, is fantastic. It gives people who don't even know anything about sailing, the ability to root for their team.
So how's it all going to work? What's the setup? It starts in 2021. Take us through 2021.
Right. So we're about 2.5 years out from the actual finals, which will be in October of 2021. Right now, we're putting the teams together. As you saw in Lausanne, 19 captains were there to announce the first 19 countries. We expect, the tournament will actually have 48 teams in it. We think there'll be up to 60 countries applying to enter the event. The boats are 47 feet long. They are one design boats, carbon fiber, high performance monohulls, but they're supplied. So countries don't have to come up with a lot of money to do this event. In fact, all the training is supplied by SSL. The training opportunities, the sales, the boats, the logistics, it's all covered. And, I think the countries that'll benefit most from this, I mean, the USA and Australia and Great Britain, we're really keen to do it for sure, but Croatia and Turkey and some of these other countries, I think it's a fantastic opportunity for them to come in, compete with, quote unquote, the bigger or maybe richer countries on a level playing field. And that's what's going to make the event great.
2021, 40 teams at the actual
48.
48 teams.
Yeah, 48 teams in the tournament.
World Cup soccer style elimination.
Exactly.
And it's quad racing.
Yeah, 4 boats in a group. So like I don't know how many teams they have in a group in the World Cup soccer. I think it's more like 6. But so we're all in groups, and you start with sort of the lower ranked teams. They'll race 5 races in their group over 3 or 4 days. 2 will go on, 2 will go out. Another 2 teams will come in to fill those that went out, and you'll have another bracket of 16 teams racing. And you continue on that way, eliminating half of the group every weekend until you get to the quarterfinals, semifinals, and the final race will be just 4 boats, and it'll be just 1 race.
And it's not in starboats.
It's not in starboats. It's in 47-foot one design boats with Jennekers and main and jib and 9 crew.
Where is the first edition being sailed?
So we're going to do all the qualifying series in Grandson, which is on a lake called Lake Neuchâtel in Switzerland, and the finals will be basically in front of the Société Nautique de Genève on Lake Geneva. The semifinals and finals, and this will be in October of 2021.
And SNG, it was Alinghi's home club, famously.
Yes.
And it's a great spot in Lake Geneva right there at the end of the lake, and it'll be great stadium racing.
It's stadium racing, hundreds of thousands of spectators. There's good breeze at that end of the lake. So I think it's going to be quite a show.
Tell us some more about the gang that was there in Lausanne at the Olympic Museum on Monday. Here's the slide of 19 of the 40 team captains. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, the amount of Olympic gold medals, silver medals, bronze medals, Olympians, world champions that are contained in those 19 people is phenomenal, not to mention America's Cup competitors. So I don't know that there'll ever be a collection of Olympians and Olympic sailors in any sailing competition like there will be in this SSL Gold Cup.
You take us through some of these. I mean, they're all famously good sailors.
Yeah, some of the highlights, Robert Scheidt, of course, right up there at the top from Brazil, 5 Olympic medals, 2 golds, 1 silver, 2 bronze. Then you come down.
Roy Heiner from
Roy Heiner from Sofia Becker-Toro, bronze and gold in the 470 for Greece. Vasco Vascotto and Francesco Bruni are working for Prada in this America's Cup. Roy Heiner Melleby sailed, won the Volvo around the world race with Ericsson, and is a Star World champion. Mateus is gold medal in the Finn World champion, Star World champion. Freddie Loof, gold medal, Star World champion. So Luis Dureste, I don't know how many Olympic medals he has. It's quite a collection of sailing luminaries.
Who was the inspiration? Who thought this up? Did you think this up? Did Mateusz Kuznierowicz, who's the sporting director, right? The Polish medalist.
Yeah, and he's certainly the spokesperson for this event. The Star Sailors League, this is another event of the Star Sailors League. You're most familiar with the star racing that we do in Nassau every December. But Michelle Nicholas, who's really the managing partner, let's say, of the Star Sailors League, and I say that because Xavier Rohart, Robert Scheidt, myself, a number of sailors have come together and worked on these concepts. And Michel is passionate, and his organization is making it happen. But it's quite a team effort to put these things together, both in thought and in practice. And for the Gold Cup, Mateus is the spokesperson, and he's kind of doing work every day on it, putting the teams together, getting the captains, coordinating the training appointments. So SSL has a training facility, sheds and sleeping facilities. Every team will be training at least a week a year over in Switzerland. And the countries that are, let's say, lower ranked will get twice as much training time as a country like the United States. So there's a lot of effort going into giving sailing and sailors opportunity in countries where it isn't so prevalent,
and leveling the playing field,
and the playing field's as level as it can be, which is a trait of the Star Sailors League. When we race in Nassau, the beautiful thing about the Starboat, and I've been sailing stars since I was 17 years old, and it's I love the boat, and I've always loved the boat. But it turns out that the Starboat is absolutely the best tool if you want to try to race a 470 sailor against a Finn sailor, because you can equalize the weights. And where the 470 sailor may not have experience in the Starboat, the SSL has paired him up with a very experienced star crew. And so you find cases like Paul Goodison, going out and smashing it 2 years ago and beating Robert Scheidt by a meter across the line. And Robert Scheidt's got, Olympic medals and 3 world championships in the Star. So
Paul Goodison, Goody, who the UK Finn medalist.
No, he was laser. Goodison is the laser.
But he's now in the Finn, right?
No, that's Giles Scott. But
is he also sailing?
Giles hasn't sailed. Ed Wright has sailed, which is a good UK Finn sailor. But anyway, the point really is that a lot of what SSL does is try to bring out the sailing talent. And like I said in my interview, and I love the America's Cup, and I love the Volvo around the world race, and I really enjoyed my time in those events where design and technology was a big part of the equation. I learned a lot from all that. But this is all about the sailing talent and the teamwork. And it's about competing on a level playing field. And in the Gold Cup case, it's really about nationalism and national pride and representing your country. And so, the fact that we were in the Olympic Museum in Lausanne was so apropos, because, there's nothing really much more patriotic than racing in the Olympic Games.
So speaking of which, that was the ceremony, the announcement in Lausanne on Monday, and you were named as team captain of the United States team. What does that mean?
That just means I'm responsible for putting the team together and coordinating when we're going to practice. And so the way the teams are going to be put together is that the captain picks 4 or 5 teammates, and the ranking system will pick 5 teammates. So, of course, you're going to ask me, how does the ranking system work? The ranking system is that SSL is trying to do a global ranking of sailors, not trying to do, is doing it. And you probably know that there are rankings of sailors within classes. But in order to determine, let's just take an example. Let's say that I'm not sure who the British laser sailor is currently, but I do know that Giles Scott's a great Finn sailor there. So let's say Giles wins the Finn Gold Cup and he wins the European Championship. But this kid in the laser wins the Laser Worlds and the Europeans and the North Americans. Well, he's going to rank higher than Giles will. And so if it came down to who gets to go in the SSL Gold Cup, the laser sailor would go because he'd have a higher ranking. And so this is an attempt to rank about 100,000 sailors globally on a equal basis.
100,000 sailors worldwide.
Yes.
It's fabulous. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, well, there's a lot of people on here. We'll come to your questions and comments in a minute. I know a lot of you will want to ask Paul. I see Margarita Marshall is on.
Yes.
Margarita
Yes.
Battini,
Yes.
who's often on here. Welcome
Yes.
to you, Margarita, and all the rest. Paul, you mentioned a minute ago this training facility that you have, and I've got some slides from Riva del Garda is the name of the town up at the north end of the lake. Is this where the training center is?
No, so there is a training
What's going
center
on here?
Okay, so a few years ago when we started inviting VIPs, non-star sailors, to the SSL finals, we realized that we needed to give them an opportunity to learn the boats and sail a bit. So Fritjof Kleen mainly and Diego Negri have created a sailing facility at Riva where there's about 8 or 10 stars, and they do clinics and training sessions there before the teams are sent to Nassau to compete in the finals.
In the starboats.
That's for starboats. The other
tell us where that is for those of us who are geographically challenged. That's
Riva's in the very northeastern part of Italy, not far from the Austrian border. Lake Garda is a beautiful lake, obviously mountainous. And it's known for the fact that in the morning, the wind blows from the southerly or from the northerly direction, and it dies between 11 and noon. And in the afternoon, those mountains up in the north side of the lake heat up and draw a thermal breeze up the lake. So we have a southerly breeze in the afternoon. And it's famous for kiting and windsurfing and
Gentimiglia.
Beautiful place to race. And in fact, we're going to have the Star European Championship there in about 3 weeks' time.
I've run a couple of youth worlds there. And of course, Lake Como, which is familiar probably to a lot of Americans, is a bit of a resort area. Who's the famous actor who's got a place on Como? George Clooney over there at Como. And Meg went to college at the next lake over at Lago di Lugano, which is just in southern Switzerland, Ticino, the Italian part of Switzerland over there to the left. On my telestrator. Okay, Meg, if you're watching, this is Lugano over here. Lago di Lugano. I get to use that once a show, whether or not.
You paid for it. You better use that thing.
Yeah, I paid for it. It's an iPad that's got a couple of fancy programs. Well, let's look at this video about this training facility for the starboats, and then I want you to come back and explain the difference between, Paul, this starboat facility there at Riva del Garda, and then what you'll be doing for the 47-footers here in due course. Let's look at this. See if we can get it running. There we go.
We're here in Riva del Garda for some star training. We actually have a really interesting cross mix of people here. We got Frida and John sailing together, and Giovanni and myself sailing together. So we got a pro skipper and a pro crew.
I'm the pro, and he's a pro.
They are surrounded. Anyway, it's really interesting. And what do you think, John? It's a good. It was close racing yesterday, wasn't it?
Absolutely, yes. Amazing. No, massive progress, massive fun, and I'm really honored to sail with you guys, and that's big fun. Yes.
What do you think, Peter?
I think that's the great thing about the SSA Training Center, that actually pro skippers, pro crews, amateur crews learn from the best. Amateur skippers can have a pro crew. We have top coaches. We have Fradia Villarriba helping a lot. And we're all here actually to prepare for the main event of the year, the SSA Breeze Grand Slam and Star Class Europeans together, first time ever, these big events. And you can gain 2,500
He's talking about the Europeans
SSA points.
Yeah, is this, Paul, this is different from the Europeans?
$100,000
This is their training, but
there's a combined, is it combined SSL and the Europeans?
Yeah, it's a combined event.
At Garda.
Garda.
Let's listen.
To improve myself so much, to do top 30, top 20, I don't know.
Okay, so not actually in the prize money range, but anyway,
We
great.
should discuss how to split the prize money.
Exactly. And yeah, and of course, all those points brings you closer to come back or sail actually on the Nations Gold Cup in 2021 in Lake Geneva.
It's one of the most beautiful places in the world, let alone one of the most picturesque scenic sailing places, right, Paul? Just
Oh, yeah,
amazing.
it's just
Lake Garda.
Fantastic wind, and in a civilized Italian way, you're kind of forced to have lunch in the middle of the day because the wind dies. And beautiful. The mountains are sheer and run straight into the water.
Julia, you've been there. In fact, you were saying while we were watching that video to Paul that there was somebody, was it a club member or was it somebody that you'd met that from Munich?
Yes, they dealt with us before and after, but Heidi.
What was it, a 6-meter event? What were you doing over there?
No, it wasn't. But Heidi, the wife at the time, was the secretary of the Bavarian Yachting Association, which there are 234 members.
Yeah, a lot of clubs, member clubs. Yeah.
And they had a house there, so we spent time a lot in the Centimiglia.
Yeah, that's a famous race, 100-mile race on the lake, I think every June or July.
Okay, let's stop here because we've got a lot of folks online watching live. Thank you to all of you for joining. I just, again, we're too many people to mention names other than maybe newcomers or any particular questions, Paul.
There's a bunch of questions at the end.
I mentioned Margarita Marshall. Welcome, the formerly Margarita Bottini, who's a great photographer and journalist from Italia. John Schaefer's back in Annapolis. Welcome back home, John. You, Bill Wingrove's watching home on the big screen following a win last night in our DIYC, Davis Island Yacht Club in Tampa. You ever?
I won a Western Hemisphere championship at Davis Island Yacht Club 2002.
In the Finn class?
Star class,
rather. Sorry. I got Finn on the brain.
You do.
I'm going to ask you about the Finn. You know that.
Are you thinking of going to the Olympics?
No, I'm not. I'm too old. I'm even older than you. But I'm not going to
be
that's
old.
I'm not going to be a grandfather quite yet.
Yeah.
Jack Everett says hi from Chattanooga. Travis Mayer's back on. Jamie Hutchison, hello to all of you. Mario Schumann must be taking a long lunch over there in Marin. He's not fixing your Mercedes, Paul. Marcus Schwentner, who's the president of the IK, the International Kiteboarding Association, is up in northern Germany. My mother, Paul, who's one of your big fans, you can give a shout out to my mom because she is.
Hi, Mrs. Zeman.
Janice. She is one of your big fans.
Where does she live? In Michigan?
She's in Michigan. And last week after the show.
Did they thaw out yet?
Yeah, barely. Last week after the show, she called me and said, "Hey, what's that thing in your ear? Is it a hearing aid?" Talk about
that'd be troublesome. I mean, it's one thing to be a grandfather, but if your children start to have hearing aids, I think you're getting up there.
And she doesn't. She's still in good shape as far as her hearing is concerned. Mary Longpree. Here's a new name, Julie. Karen Rosenbaum Hester. Nice. And Ted Ryman's watching from Cape Town in South Africa. My mother says big hugs to Paul. She's a big fan of yours and Dennis Connors.
Wow.
And Big Jim Nicholas, by the way.
Big Jim.
She after she met Jim, she said, I knew I always wanted to grow up and have a grinder. And I said, Mom, do you know what that means? A grinder. I know, this is a family show. John Sangmeister is watching. Chris Exley from up in Marblehead or in the North Shore of Boston. Anderson's watching, Richard Anderson. Mary Longpree, so good to see Paul. Hi, Paul, looking good. Great to see Julie and Tom as well. Do you know Mary Longpree is a photographer and very cool person down at Newport Harbor Yacht Club and Balboa Yacht Club.
Love that spot.
Yeah, well, you've done some star boat sailing down there. I'm sure.
Yeah, they got a brand new shiny club down there now.
Yeah, have you seen the new club?
Haven't been in it since it's been finished.
It's beautiful. I had lunch there with Dion McDonald, who is Bill Ficker's, the late great Bill Ficker's daughter and good friend. Not too long ago, Chris Gruby, who's involved with the Long Beach Yacht Club America's Cup effort. Chris, you guys you're running out of time down there. You got to get cracking if you're going to really do that. Joan Winston, is the ranking analogous to UTR for tennis? Joan Winston, a very sharp lady in the D.C., Washington, D.C. How's this ranking? It's not a world sailing ranking, it's the SSL ranking.
Yeah.
Right? How's that work
it's
again?
A global ranking. It's you win points for various events. So World Championships and Olympic Games count for 4,000 points. A Continental Championship might be 2,000 points. So you are scored on your best 6 scores over a 2-year period, and that way you can compare and rank a laser sailor against a Melges 24 sailor, Melges 20 sailor, a J70 sailor, an Etchell sailor. Right now there are rankings within classes, but there is no global ranking. And if you want to pick the highest ranked sailor in the United States, you don't know if it's Anna Tooncliffe or, Caleb Payne, or how do you figure that out? So this is an objective way to be able to say who are the highest ranked, highest performing sailors in a country, and therefore who's qualified to go in the SSL Gold Cup.
So the team captain, you in the case of the United States, will pick
5. And 5 will come from the ranking.
And 5 will come from the ranking automatically.
Yes. You ask them if they want to, of course, if they qualified and they didn't want to do it, they wouldn't have to. But
so that also gives you the chance to pick somebody who's a good bowman on a big boat.
Exactly.
And a good tactician.
Yeah, you might get out of the ranking, you might get, a Mark Mendelblad or a Paul Cayard or Augie Diaz. And so you have to think with your picks that maybe you want to make sure you have, someone who knows how to do the bow or maybe be a grinder on a boat like that.
And the team captain is not necessarily driving.
Not necessarily. Not even sailing.
Not even
There's
sailing.
11 on a team for 8 on board.
Will you sail?
Yet to be determined.
Okay. John Schaefer, Paul says, and he's in Annapolis. Good on you, Paul. Really appreciate the fact that you're building capacity. You are building capacity for the sport and ranking people on an equal basis. Perfectly done. You're the man.
Well, let me correct. I'm not doing that, but SSL is. Believe it or not, it's a very complicated job, and there's 10 people working on this full time. 10 people full time every day of the week working on this. And the first global ranking should come out in November, December this year. And just like ATP and PGA, it'll come out every 2 weeks. There'll be a new ranking.
Okay, well, that's good new information. I hope that answers your question, Joan Winston. Gerard Sheridan, who is the esteemed St. Francis member and photographer, did a great job shooting the Nations
He's the
Cup
head of ERC.
and the head of the executive race committee. Right, Scott McLeod, who is the commercial director for New York Yacht Club's Young America team. Actually. James Peterson, Paul, looking good in the 50th E-Scow blue chip shirt. A pretty good lineup of sailors at that regatta.
Yeah.
Like SSL.
Yeah, I love that regatta. Sailing the scows out there, some of the most friendly people I've ever met in sailing out there in Lake Pewaukee, and of course headquarters of Harkin Company, Harpoon and the Harkin Company, and collected at the 50th Dave Ullman and Holmberg and Bora and JJ Eisler, and I'm not naming 20 other fantastic sailors that were invited to compete in that sort of champion of champions event. It was an honor to be there.
Dick Anderson asks a good question. Very cool concept, but very expensive, he says. But it's really not all that expensive. How does it pencil, he says?
It pencils because Michelle Nicholas is passionate about exposing sailing to a broader public and about giving opportunity to a lot of sailors who wouldn't have the opportunity to compete on this level, and to do it on a level playing field. So for the teams will spend less than $100,000 to do this, because the lodging, the boats, the sails, the travel, everything is covered by SSL.
Tell us some more about Michelle.
Michelle's a low profile guy. He's a star sailor, amateur, has enjoyed it over the years, a successful businessman, and when the Star got the boot out of the Olympics in 2012, he was one of those people. Like now we have many Finn aficionados that are upset about the Finn getting kicked out, and Michelle and Xavier Rohard and some of us found the answer in creating the Star Sailors League and the events that you've all seen so far.
Another scow sailor is here, David Perigo. You probably remember David as an old friend of mine. He says, thanks for wearing your shirt.
I sailed with him.
Oh, did you?
I think I sailed on his boat.
He said you finished fourth, so he remembers well among Bora, Holmberg, Ullman, Lewitt, Cam Lewis, Dave Perry, Betsy, Jobson, Mark Reynolds, and others. Great having you. So I sailed the Sea Blue Chip, and I can't remember any more fun regatta. I didn't do all that well, but it was great fun, and what a great lineup of people. Julia, do you have any other particular questions?
Yeah, there at the end there are a couple. Like Margarita Marshall wants to know who's paying for all that, and well, and also is the prototype of the boat already designed?
Yeah. As I said, there's it's being paid by the Star Sailors League, and as far as the boat goes, the boats currently exist, and they're going to be modified to be the SSL 47.
Can you reveal who's building it?
No, not really here to declare that, but it's one of the boats was actually revealed at the Stockholm Boat Show. So I guess it's out a bit, but if you want to Google that or look at them, there was one at the Stockholm Boat Show.
Okay. Well, I won't press you yet.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's Neely, or we're still not sure if it's Neely or Niley Williamson, who is often on here. Welcome again, Niley. She says you guys, meaning SSL, are doing a better job than World Sailing. And I won't ask you to comment on that, Paul, because I know you are endorsed by World Sailing. The event is sanctioned by World Sailing.
It's a special event under the World Sailing classifications.
But the point I make here, and we make on this show, I'm so frustrated with World Sailing, and I was heavily involved for years. But this, we said the other day, is bottom up. This is for sailors, by sailors, about sailors. And it's what's great about the Star class and the Finn class, the Flying Dutchman class, and these other classes that are run by class owners associations like the Star class. And full marks to you. Bravo, Zulu. And I couldn't agree more with Niley. And I see you shaking your head. Yes.
Yeah, well, I couldn't have said it better. By sailors, for sailors. And it's really about the sailing. And as I said before, I loved my time in the Cup and around the world where technology was a big part of it. But this is mano a mano. It's more like playing basketball or, a sport where it's all about the team and the equipment is not too complicated.
Marcos Weinstein saying he's acting like he's in front of the U.S. Senate confirmation hearing. You're being
well, yeah. I mean, you kept telling me to move the mic closer. I felt like, I don't know if I was, Lady Gaga in A Star Is Born. I mean, this thing's right up against or maybe, hopefully I'm more like, what's his name? Not Lady Gaga.
But you're the meat and the sandwich here between Julia and I, or the rose between two thorns. I would never call Julia a thorn. Gerard Sheridan says this could make some great racing TV live streaming, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. Paul, you've been doing live streaming of the SSL, and talk some more about this 4-boat racing. We called the other day, Ali Dinas said maybe we should call it heat racing because it's kind of small heats.
Yeah, well, we didn't want to do 2-boat. That's match race. We didn't want to do 3-boat because that kind of ends. But we didn't want to do a big fleet because if you have 10 or 12 boats, lack of experience is going to cause you. Lack of dealing with a big fleet in big boats is going to make a difference. So we want all the countries, even the less experienced, to be able to get off the line, get a lane, stay close to the leaders and fight for the win on the run. And so we decided 4-boat groupings was the right number.
Do you have a team from China yet?
Not yet. We're working on China, though. We definitely have contacts with China. In fact, you should know that the team in the group that is working on the captains is Craig Monk. So it's myself, Simi Fantala, and Mateus, and we're working on the team captains, and Craig Monk is spending a lot of time in China, as you probably know, and so he's working on the team from China and a team from New Zealand.
And I want you to know that Lizia Zhu, the Olympic gold medalist in the laser class, or the laser radial, right? Who John Emmett was her coach. We had John on the show not too long ago. And by the way, John Bertrand, American John Bertrand, wants to come on the show, as does Aussie John Bertrand. Maybe I'll get them both on this show.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Will the real John Bertrand stand up?
But Lizia has been watching the last few weeks, and she's on here, and obviously a top sailor, and John Emmett, who has been her coach.
Well, she could easily be the #1 ranked sailor in China.
Yeah.
So this could be her team.
Peter Henderson's watching. He says, good watching from a wet New Zealand at the NZ Trailer Yacht Championship.
By the way, that's another thing that needs to be pointed out. The #1 ranked sailor right now in Portugal is a 16-year-old girl sailing the radial. And, Leisha Lee and Sofia Beccatoro. And the thing about this is this is the great equalizer. We don't have to make any rules we don't have any sex or whatever you call it.
Gender rules.
We don't have to have any gender rules because it takes care of itself.
Right.
You win the women's 470 worlds, you get just as many points as Giles Scott if he wins the Finn Gold Cup. So there are going to be women in this competition.
And you don't have to have a requirement that you have X many people underage.
No, we don't have any of that complicated stuff.
Yeah. No, it's really.
Margarita Marshall wants to know, how many boats are you planning to build?
12 to 14.
Have you done any coverage deals? Mark Curtis wants to know.
Coverage, you mean?
It's going to be live to.
This is another important point about the SSL. No fees will be charged for distribution. SSL will produce entirely the show, and we will be giving away the product, the racing programming for exposure. And I have to say, it's I've always kind of felt this was the way to do it, and had some adversarial opinions about that at times. But sailing needs exposure, and it's not that popular of a spectator sport. And to stand around waiting for people to pay large sums of money to put the show on TV is naive, I think. So right now, the SSL series in Nassau, you should know, costs about $200,000 to produce, and you've all seen the product. And that type of production will continue through all SSL events, the Grand Slams, the finals, and the Gold Cup.
Bill Wingrove asks, is there any chance for an amateur to have a shot at a spot on the boat, someone who does not get to race all over in the various championships? And I think the answer is...
You mean and qualify if you can't qualify through the ranking, the way you would get on the boat is if the team captain feels that you're, suitable as a candidate to be on the team. But it is meant to be a high-level competition. It will be a very high-level competition.
But you could, for example, not that you would do this, but you could choose somebody who's a high-level amateur sailor, A, because they help fund the team, B, because they're just they have to be a hell of a good sailor, and they can provide maybe logistics support or whatever, right?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
Cool stuff. Okay, I'm going to switch ahead now to another topic. We can always come back and talk. Anything else, Paul, you want to say about this before we leave the SSL and go on to the the America's Cup and SailGP?
I'm excited to be part of it, and I think it's a great thing for sailing. Not for me, not for Robert Scheidt. It's just a great thing for sailing.
Couldn't agree more. And we've been promoting it, as such as we can, but we've been enthusiastic about it. Congratulations to you and everybody else involved. Now we have a pretty picture at the start of a video for SailGP, which is coming to a bay near many of you watching and the three of us in 2 weeks' time. And let's have a look at this SailGP promotional, very brief video, and then get Paul's comments on this.
The start of a brand new sailing adventure, SailGP.
Awesome day, amazing atmosphere. Races were absolutely incredible.
Hold on. Whoa, that's fast.
This afternoon has been absolutely incredible. The boats are beautiful, the backdrop's beautiful.
SailGP is coming to San Francisco May 4th and 5th. You gotta come check it out. Love to see you there.
Okay, SailGP, their second of 5 regattas coming here to San Francisco Bay in 2 weeks' time, being run off the Yacht Club Peninsula between Golden Gate Yacht Club and St. Francis Yacht Club. Paul, what are your views on this event put on by our good mutual friend and with whom you started an event back in the day that was going to be called
World Sailing League.
World Sailing League, the WSL.
Yeah.
And that's kind of morphed into SailGP, but also in some ways you're doing that with the Star Sailors League World Cup.
Anyway, I think this is great. They're using the boats from Bermuda. They've been modified, and I think they've made one design, the foils one design, a lot of the mechanisms, and The board controls are run off electric power now, and the sailors are controlling the sails, or at least the wing control. So I think it's great to find a use for all that. I think Larry Ellison's obviously quite passionate about those machines. They are amazing sailing machines, to generate the speed they have, and they've got very competent people on board, which you have to have at 50 knots of boat speed. And we're honored that the event's coming to San Francisco.
Okay. And Julia, and I haven't seen any questions about Sail GP. They were all at Golden Gate Yacht Club last night. There was a bit of a welcome, and I see that St. Francis, that we are going to host at St. Francis a meet and greet for the British team.
We've had a meet and greet for the American team a couple of weeks ago. Russell was here. You were there. And, I think St. Francis is happy to host all the teams.
Great. Okay. We can come back to anybody that has questions or comments, but I want to look now at another video on another topic, what used to be called the Whitbread Round the World Race, then the Volvo Ocean Race, and now it will be called the Ocean Race. And here in 60 seconds is a preview of that event, which will also take place in 2021.
Now, to foil or not to foil, that's the question. And the good news is, in the Ocean Race, we have the best of both worlds. Yeah, there's a new boat in town, the super fast, high-tech foiling Imoca 60. If you thought the last race was extreme, get ready for the next one. These things fly above the water, they have just 5 crew, and they push the limits of possibility even further than ever before.
But don't worry, the One Design VO65s are still a big part of the race, and they'll be doing exactly the same course as the Imocas, with a focus on youth and diversity. Don't forget, these are the boats that gave us that insanely close racing last time out, and even set a new speed record.
But I know what you're thinking, where are we going? Well, the Ocean Race is still a round the world race, and the route will be revealed this summer. But one thing's for sure, plenty more epic Southern Ocean sailing. Ocean health is still really important to us. We made a massive impact last race, and this time we want to do even better. But to do that, we need your help, so keep turning the tide on plastic. The race begins in Alicante in 2021. That's about 1,000 days from now, 24,000 hours or 1.4 million minutes. And with 5 seconds of this video remaining, I can finally reveal the new race logo.
Okay, that's the Ocean Race, formerly the Volvo Ocean Race, and before that, the Whitbread. Paul, you won it. You won the last edition of the Whitbread. What year was that?
98. 97, 98.
EF Language.
EF Language.
What do you think of this new edition?
Well, the main thing I like about it is trying to combine or use the same piece of equipment for both the single-handed round the world race and the crewed round the world race. I think in general in sailing, we need to, group ourselves together a little more rather than disperse ourselves. So I think this is great. And also from a commercial standpoint, a team and its sponsors can have multiple events, and a major event every year. So rather than waiting 3 years for some event to happen and, paying the bills for 3 years for 6 weeks of racing, every year there's going to be either the Vendée Globe or the Ocean Race.
Or the Route to Rome.
Or the Route to Rome or something high profile. So, I think that's the opportunity to deliver a lot more value to sponsors, and it's commercial, so there has to be value there in order to get sponsorship.
In fact, I don't remember the number. Somebody on here who's watching will tell us that there's something like 20 Imoca 60s already signed up for the Fastnet race this year.
Yeah, well, Imoca 60 is a big class, and there's a little bit of getting together that has to happen, and of course there's a transformation of the boat between the single-handed version and the double. And that'll cost a little bit, I don't know, a couple $100,000 to transform the boat a little bit, but it's still a fantastic concept, and I'm really supportive of it, and I think they'll get great participation.
You are uniquely qualified as both a successful offshore sailor in the round the world race, and of course a star sailor and everything in between. Laser sailor out here in front of the club in the laser slalom.
Yeah.
Do you want to comment on the Olympic class situation?
You know, I've lost a little touch with that. I mean, obviously the Star went out in 2012, and now the Finn is going out. Seems apparently, or maybe. But it seems they're trying to move along, whoever they are, who feels that we need, not the slower tactical boats, and we need more high-speed boats. And the offshore race is interesting. The offshore class in the Olympics, I guess that's interesting. Although in 2028, people will be drifting around the backside of Catalina Island. I don't know if they've thought about what it's like to sail off the coast of California in the night.
What about Marseille at night?
Well, Marseille could be nothing also, or it could be a Mistral, which would be kind of rough at night. But anyway, some people a lot smarter than me, I guess, are figuring that out.
You're Julia, he's obviously more diplomatic. He is in front of the Senate confirmation hearing
Yes.
for Secretary of State.
Yes, and he's doing well.
So far, so good. Okay, let's see how he does on the America's Cup. Not that this is a test. Let's go look at, this is a video now of, well, you'll see it. You'll know exactly what it is, most of you, when you see it. Then we'll come back and talk about it. Okay. Well, you know what that video is all about. That is the two test boats, Ineos Team UK's test boat, the 28-footer, and then that is New York Yacht Club's Young America test boat, a.k.a. the Mule. At least that's what Terry Hutchinson and co. are calling it. And those, other than that little dive in at the end, here's apparently what's happening a lot with these foiling monohulls. Next up is a spy video from one of the teams. I won't name which team it is from. I get my mic up here a bit. But it is a spy video taken of Sir Ben Ainsley's team, and this is now several months old, and it's been run on, it ran on Facebook again last night and had over 5,000 views, maybe 6,000 views overnight, because these boats are problematic, these foiling monohulls, Paul, as you know, and we'll come back and talk to Paul about that in a moment.
Getting high there. Yep, that's a big one. That would have hurt. Guys everywhere then.
Okay, I'm not going to play it again. You can see it on my Facebook page and any number of others. The word is, one hears that for all the number of times now that New York Yacht Club has been sailing both up in Newport, Rhode Island, and then this winter down in Pensacola Bay, and for all the time, I think Sir Ben was sailing obviously up at his base, and then in the UK, and then he's been also now down in Spain doing some sailing with this Quant 28, and you don't get to see some of the crash and burns that are happening, and we hear that the capsizing of these boats is rather regular. And I don't know I've heard numbers from insiders at New York Yacht Club, from insiders in Ben's team, and I don't want to quote them, but this is brand new territory. It's brand new turf. We know that the foil arms that were developed to be one design foil arms to be produced by the Italians, and the foil arm mechanism is being produced by the Kiwis. Those mechanisms have been shipped now, at least to the big three. This is what I call the super teams, the super challengers. But Paul, let's come to you. And you and I did three America's Cup campaigns together, and you've done what, 7 or 8 total?
7.
And this is nothing like, it's unlike anything any of us has seen.
Well, the last few cups, have really been pushing the envelope on technology, and this is another example. And if you love seeing how fast boats can be pushed around by wind, this is an amazing challenge. And I think it would be super fun to be one of the sailors. You know, they're just learning a ton about technology and lift and drag and all these scientific elements that go into sailing a contraption like that. And that's, I guess, what the America's Cup has become. You know, the 12-team America's Cups, or even the 13 Challenger America's Cup we had in Fremantle. I guess those are gone for a while, and we know we're back to where we were 100 years ago with 3 boats. So it is what it is. It's a scientific competition, really.
John Winston is asking, is it really unambiguously true that speed is a requisite to attract people to sailing in general and to a regatta for viewership?
Well, I think speed attracts someone. You know, I think it is a factor for people who don't know sailing. It's an element that you can get interested in, just how fast the boats go, as is nationalism. You know, patriotism's another thing that'll draw people to watch any sport, curling or, you know, pétanque or even sailing. I mean, you know, so if you're not a fan, these are the elements that can draw you to watch something. But it's kind of a catch-22 because of the cost and because of maybe the speed and the technology, there's only 4 teams. So at the same time as you're hoping to attract a lot of people by having a thing ripping around at 50 knots, you don't have, you know, a team from Germany, you don't have a team from France, you don't have a team from Japan, you don't have a team from China, and there goes about 2 billion people.
A lot of people were surprised that the Kiwis did not return to monohulls, and we thought that the Challenger record that Patrizio Bertelli, who you know well, as do I, was going to do a deal with them on something like a AC 75 monohull, maybe a semi-foiling monohull, or maybe just a straight monohull. How many teams do you think there would have been in the next edition of the Cup if it was in?
Like mini maxis, the maxi 72s. Yeah, exactly. I think there you would have had 8 to 10 teams.
Maybe more.
Maybe more. And the other thing about that, just if anybody cares, is it would have been additive to something that already exists. So every year in Porto-Cervo, there's the Maxi Worlds, and there are 8 or 9 of these things racing. The America's Cup had chosen that class to run the America's Cup in. Then there would have been 18 to 20 of these things at a world championship.
Exactly.
And, you know, it's gross. It's growth. It's the positively rolling snowball. And, you know, unfortunately, well, anyway, they want to have a technological competition. When you win the America's Cup because you're the best foiling country in a catamaran, as they were in Bermuda, and you want to keep the cup, you're likely to make the game something that you're good at. And what they were very good at was the simulator. They developed a better simulator than anybody, and that's why they were so much more capable in Bermuda than Oracle was. And now, interestingly, Team New Zealand and Prada have been relying on the simulator rather than building a mule, because they thought they'd be sailing by about this time in the big boats. But as you know, the foiling arms, the first go-round of the foiling arms broke under testing, and so they haven't been able to deliver the foiling arms. So the launch of the big boats is delayed, and now Terry Hutchinson and Ben Ainsley are looking super smart because they're getting, you know, sailing days in their mules constantly.
Exactly. Okay, well, time will tell, see how that all works out, and we hope we don't see this. We hope that's not unsafe at any speed, but it is interesting that it looks to me, Paul, like there are only going to be 3 challengers. Maybe Long Beach Yacht Club makes it. Maybe they got big problems, and with every passing day that they don't sort out their funding and their structure, they've got to have new, fresh leadership. I don't know that Mike Buckley and Taylor Canfield, who are sailors, are capable of pulling this off. The last time there was a sailor-led America's Cup campaign, you were on it. You led it. And that was in 2000. I was your rules advisor. The late, great Bob Buddha Billingham was our COO. And you ran that campaign. And at the end of that campaign, you were exhausted. We all were. But how did you end up sailing, managing, raising the money? That was a hell of an effort. 2000, almost 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that's been 20 years.
And I don't know how Mike and Taylor think they can do it. They've got to find some strong America's Cup experience leadership and to augment their obviously good sailing skills, and maybe that team then will make it. But the other two teams, the Dutch and the Malta team, I mean, they've run out of time. Unless the event gets delayed, there is some very little talk. John Sangmeister down in Long Beach has run that flag up the pole to say, with the foil arms breaking and not enough time for some of these teams to get really into the game. If you want more challengers, you got to give everybody more time. And I doubt very much whether that's going to happen because, as you know, Paul, that just adds 15 million somethings, euros, dollars to the budget, if not more, of running costs just to keep everybody paid and going for another year.
Yeah, and I think if you want more time, you're going to enter the 37th America's Cup. I mean, that's what Dalton's answer will be. He'll just say, I'll run the race with one other team, and just like Lipton against Vanderbilt, and he doesn't care. And,
Exactly.
There'll be 2 million Kiwis will show up, and that's half of their country. And, that's what matters down there. And if you want more time, then enter the next one.
Okay. Well, unless there are other questions or comments, Julia, I'm going to make this a little observation here that was in the papers in New Zealand this morning on the 19th, where it's now down there. It's the 20th. It's early in the morning down there on Saturday the 20th. But apparently there's some confusion about whether Pete Burling has been signed as skipper or helmsman. He is signed. That seems to be confirmed by everybody. I'm going to back this title off. But even the newspapers are confirmed. The headline says, Team New Zealand not confirming Peter Burling as skipper for the next America's Cup. This was after Ray Davies said last week that he was going to be the skipper. And now they're backing that off and saying, well, maybe it's going to be Glenn Ashby, as he was in Bermuda, was the quote-unquote skipper, and that's as distinct from being the helmsman. Look at the caption under the picture. Peter Burling has been confirmed as Team New Zealand skipper, and the headline says he's not. So even the newspapers are bloody well confused. I'm sure they'll sort it out, but it's an interesting question. And, Paul, there's quite a difference, really, in terms of responsibility on a team between the skipper and the helmsman.
Yeah, I mean, some teams like to divide that up. It's become a little bit more the standard. Back in our era in the 80s, I mean, Dennis Conner was the skipper and the helmsman. Blackhaller was the skipper and the helmsman. I fulfilled that role myself. But it can be divided, and I think it was a good example in Bermuda where you had a very young, very talented sailor who had a lot of skiff experience, and his name was Pete Burling, and he was the right guy to have on the wheel because he had the sensitivity for that. But in a bigger scale, responsibility scale, maybe even selecting the crew and dealing with management. What's the sailing schedule? When are we training? When are we shipping? We need a new wing. No, we don't need another new wing. You had a more experienced guy like Glenn Ashby, who was older and had been through a few cups before. So they chose to divide up the responsibilities that way.
To say nothing of being a dozen-time world champion in multi-hulls.
Great sailor in his own right. But, those boats were very complicated. They did have the simulator. Probably Burling was spending hours and hours training on that simulator. And to insulate him from all the meetings, as you know how the America's Cup is, all the meetings, all the decisions, just let that guy be really good at steering the boat.
You used to call not meetings, you'd call them beatings.
Yeah. Well, we had the America's Cup is a series of meetings or beatings followed by a race.
3
years of beatings, and then there's a little race for about 6 weeks.
Yeah, if that even. Okay, well, we'll see how that all sorts out, whether Pete is the skipper. He's in Genoa, I think, sailing in his 49ers, doing another 49er campaign. And full marks to him. He's a hell of a good sailor, as needless to say is Glenn Ashby. Julia, before we wrap this up, get Paul's comments on one or two more things. I see that Alessandra Ponderese has tuned in. She's the rules advisor and legal counsel for the Challenger of Record, COR 36. Push your mic down just a bit, Jack Everett. Yeah, there he wants to see your mouth, I guess, when you're talking. Chris Barnard. Now you know Chris.
Yeah,
the laser sailor.
Congratulations! Yeah, he just won Princess Sophia.
Exactly.
Did a great job
with like 107 boats in the competition, and he won the laser division.
I think it might have been more than that. I think that's what ended up in the gold fleet, or I thought it was 200 lasers, or some astronomical number.
Well, I think counting laser radials, that
okay.
may be true, but I think there were 100 and something. And Chris, whom I only know barely, they're training partners. The whole thing is training partners. I mean, look at what the French did here in the Nations Cup last weekend. Both the men and the women's teams won in this match racing. They had a coach, and they've been training together at least for a year, if not longer.
Yeah.
It's the whole deal, right?
Training partners are important.
Who's your training partner in the Star?
Well, I sail. I don't really have a partner. To be honest with you, I don't spend a ton of time training. I go out maybe for a day or two before an event, and I'm in a little bit different phase of life right now. I'm not trying to win the round the world race or the Olympics. So,
but you won Bacardi Cup.
I didn't win the Bacardi.
Well,
I was very, very good in Bacardi, and I've had great results this year. I got third in the World Championship in October, which it had probably been back to 1992 since I was third. So, I'm enjoying the Star a lot. And as I said, we've got the European Championship coming up and then the World Championship in June.
Okay, well, I see. Julie, do you have a point?
Only that Hamish Nichols said, as a true global and sporting event, perhaps Fremantle was the best America's Cup. Even my mom thinks that she's a non-sailor. So what was great about that, and what could be done better? Sorry to miss the answer if this was discussed earlier.
Well, you want to?
Yeah, I mean, Fremantle was great action, wind every day. There were 17 teams in Fremantle, 13 challengers and 4 defender teams. So you had, 10 different nations following their teams down there. As it was for most of the world, Europe and the United States, the racing occurred in the night. People had to wake up in the middle of the night to watch these races. That made it even more compelling. And the boats were sort of one design. I mean, there was a design element to it, but they were plodding along, and there was drama on the high seas. So it was a very compelling competition. It was also the first time that television ever had cameras on board. So for the public,
Bud cam.
Yeah, the Bud cam. So for people to get on board with the sailors and see how rough the conditions were in Fremantle, it was very compelling.
Well, to say exactly, and all your numbers were correct, and that was by far the most number of challengers and the number of total teams. But there was also the compelling story of could Dennis,
win it back,
and then Dennis and you guys, you and Blackaller, who were famously competitive in the Star class and in the SORC and other venues and other races, now racing against each other. You guys had a very interesting boat.
Yeah, well, that was the first challenge from St. Francis Yacht Club, and we had a very innovative boat where we separated away the lifting elements of the appendages from the righting moment element, and maybe we were just a few months away from having a serious breakthrough. We finished third in the Louis Vuitton Cup that time, and on very little money and very little time, and it was a very credible effort that we put in.
It was a lot of fun, very warmly received. We all were. I was with New York's team, as you know, and of course that was a story too. Could New York Yacht Club go down there with a whole new team? Dennis was no longer with us; he was with his own team, San Diego Yacht Club. And could we go back? Could we, New York Yacht Club, win it back? And of course we didn't. We were famously, fifth. Didn't even make the semifinals. It's probably as good a time as any to move on because I see that Elizabeth Little, and I'll tell Elizabeth that you and I have had a little chat here before.
Little,
before we went to air. Commodore John McNeil has signed on. Vice Commodore Ken Glidewell has signed on. Richard Robinson asks the question: will Sport Vision play a role in the SSL?
Sport Vision, is that a cable?
I think what he means is he means,
he means Virtual Eye.
Yeah, he means Stan Honey's
Global
Eye.
So the SSL uses a product called Virtual Eye. So it's the same software producer, and it's intermixing virtual reality with actual shots of the boat sailing. It'll be similar to the production you've seen in the series in Nassau.
ARL, Animated Research Limited in New Zealand.
Yeah.
Is that company behind it. Okay, so I got one final question for you. I want to go back to the slides for a moment. This is a nice aerial view, obviously, of St. Francis Yacht Club, where at least the three of us and many of you watching are members, one of the handful of top clubs by anybody's account in not only the country but in the world. And Paul, you are not only on the board, you're chairman of the board, and that's a huge role. It's a big role. How does that differ from being Commodore?
Well, the Commodore is the leader of the fleet. He's really the representative of all members, and the board of directors provides oversight to all the activities of the yacht club. And as chairman of the board, I'm chiefly responsible for really the business aspects of the club. We have a staff of 120 people, and it's quite a large business, and there's a lot of business activities that happen there. So that's how the roles are divided.
I'm not aware, and Julie and I have this discussion every night, I'm not aware of any other club that has this bifurcated leadership where there's a chairman of the board and a Commodore. Is it a good system? Do you commend that to other clubs?
Well, I've never been in a management or hierarchy of any other club, and for us it works well. Paul Heineken is a great Commodore. He's a man of a lot of experience at the club. Honored to be his chairman.
Hell of a good sailor.
Hell of a great sailor. Raised a couple of other great sailors. But more importantly, Paul just has been on every committee and been all over the club, and he is truly the right person to be representing the membership and to be representing the club when we host people. Like last week, we had people from all over the world for the Nations Cup, and then on the board of directors, we have an incredible group of talented people as well. You mentioned Elizabeth Little and Pam Healy, an Olympic medalist, and we have 3 very great attorneys. The board is about 15 people in total, and I'm honored to be the person coordinating them every month. We're having our board meeting next Thursday, and it's I've been a member since before I could drive a car.
I remember.
And Julia remembers that.
Was he a good driver when he was first starting out?
No, of course not, but he was a great sailor.
And, for me, I've been not in touch with this level of the club for 40 or 43 years. And to come in, and last year I was on finance and really understand the operations and of what is the St. Francis Yacht Club. It's been an incredible education and experience, and I'm proud of the institution that is the St. Francis Yacht Club.
Well, I am too, and Julia is as well, and I'm particularly proud of people like you. I mean, Dennis Conner was Commodore at San Diego Yacht Club. Buddy Malgos, Commodore up at his club in Lake Geneva, and you can go through the list of good sailors. Ding Schoonmaker, particularly people in the star class. For some reason, the star class. Malin Burnham, famously good contributor to the sport.
Great businessman,
past Commodore of San Diego and so on. And you can go all around the world, and the people who are watching who've come up through one of these classes like the Star or the Finn, there's the Gerardo Seeligers and others who come up through the Finn class. And it's these class owners association that run by sailors for sailors that are the basis of the sport, just like these clubs. And Julia and I are both very proud of you and proud to be members of St. Francis. And it's sailor driven. That's what sets it apart, right?
Yes.
Right, Julia?
Absolutely.
One last Bravo Zulu, and then we'll wrap this turkey up. I want to say, again, congrats to everybody on the St. Francis board. They put on a hell of a regatta last week on that Nations Cup. You weren't here, but we were there. We went over and I filmed, I videoed the prize giving, and Paul did, Commodore Heineken, Dr. Heineken did a great job. Bravo Zulu also, Paul, you have a connection to the Trans-Pacific Yacht Club, who are celebrating their 50th race, not the anniversary because they started in 2006 and have been going on for over, it's 113 years, but every other year is typically, except the Warriors, they run the LA to Honolulu race. And this is a record turnout, at least in the modern era, 108 entries, including Manoush Moshaedi's Rio 100. Manoush, a member of St. Francis here. And Comanche is coming back from Australia, and they are coming, the new owner whose name escapes me. Do you remember the new owner's name?
Australian.
An Australian guy. They are now entered, and one hears that Blackjack, not Blackjack the Maxi, the 100-foot actually, but Blackjack, the former
Volvo
Volvo
70.
70, is also coming up. So they're going to have, maybe there's some attrition now. Maybe a couple boats drop out in the remaining weeks. It's starts the 4th of July or that week. But congratulations to them. Tell us the story about your Transpac race with your kids.
Yeah, well, I did the Transpac exactly 10 years ago with my kids. First, we did the Pac Cup in 2008 with our Santa Cruz 50, and then we sailed a TP52 called Flash from LA to Honolulu in 2009, and those experiences were fantastic. It was an opportunity for me to do something in the sport with my kids, really an adventure aspect of the sport, and for them to feel a lot of the self-satisfaction and the ability, the confidence that sailing from one piece of land to the other gives you. And it's anyway, I love the Transpac. I also sailed in 1995 with Larry Ellison on Sayonara, and I had a bit of an offer to do it this year, but I got some other important appointment happening, ironically, in Fremantle.
And in Fremantle, it's your daughter who's going to make you a grandfather.
Yes, I'm for the first time going to be a grandfather on the 4th of July.
You're going to beat me once again.
Oh,
to being a grandfather.
Well,
despite being quite a bit younger.
Yeah, well.
Congratulations.
Yeah, that's exciting.
And she's now, this is Allie, she's now in Frio.
She lives in Frio. She is essentially marrying, or her partner is Kinley Fowler, who is in my apartment as we speak. He's here getting the boat together for the Australian team for the Sail GP.
Great. Cool stuff. Okay, just a couple other comments here. Phil Perkins is signed on to watch.
Phil.
John Sangmeister reminds us that it is James Cooney who now owns Comanche. And so does Jack Everett, reminded us the same thing. Paul Mabey's watching, Dan Primrose, and David Santori. Hello, David. And Jack Bush have all signed on here at the end. And everyone's wishing everybody a happy Easter, and may we do the same for you. We'll give you our normal video and photo credits at the end. Thanks to all of you. And this pretty well wraps up our 175th show, unless Julia or Paul, you have anything else?
No, I'd just also like to wish everybody a happy Easter and Good Friday. And, the events of last Sunday in Paris were pretty dramatic. And as a French citizen, it meant something to me. And I was watching that from my hotel room in Geneva, and it was powerful. But the response by the French people is also powerful. So, kind of interesting that it all happened this week.
You must know Bernard Arnault as well.
Yes.
I've had dinner with him.
Amazing how the family stepped up right away. And there's so much passion and spirit around that church all over the world. So everybody's cheering for Notre Dame.
I saw you at a Notre Dame football game. Did you have a connection to Notre Dame, the American College?
I do. My girlfriend, Karen Phelps, is Notre Dame alumni, and we've enjoyed going to many of the home games in the last few years. And Phil Trinter, my star crew from Athens, his wife works for Notre Dame, so we pal around out there a little bit in the fall.
Okay.
And Notre Dame, by the way,
don't tell me about Michigan.
Michigan? do they have a university in Michigan?
The football team has been suspect of late, and the basketball team's pretty okay. But yeah.
Great to be with you. Great to be with you.
Really nice.
Yeah. Thank you.
Julia, thank you again. This has been great to have Paul in studio.
Indeed.
And we'll do it again on Tuesday, same time, same channel, as you all know. We appreciate you very much coming on for our 175th show. Julia, soon it will be 200. Hard to believe. Thanks again. Happy Easter for those of you who celebrate it. In the meantime, enjoy your weekend. See you Tuesday. Sail fast, sail safe, and have fun.